Hello, this is your teacher, Paul. It's Sunday, November 16th, 2025. Earlier, I started this live streaming event and ended it after about 10 seconds because I didn't know exactly what I was doing with some new software that I have for doing things live. And I'm not using that software now because I wasn't able to figure out how to use it. But it's just a matter of time. The reason for choosing this particular software is because then I'll be able to do some more interesting things when doing these live events, such as showing graphics, individual words. I hope to be able to use some kind of a whiteboard, something that would allow me to write out sentences, which I could probably do here, but I prefer to do it from my desk rather than standing up against the whiteboard. But I might try that too. So I've done that in the past. The question I put to my students online was, what is the hardest part of learning English? And then I gave just four options. That was for areas in grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. And the last one is confidence, having the confidence to speak, which so far seems to be the option that most people have chosen. It looks like it's the reactions look like they're fairly equally distributed among those 4 different possibilities, but, confidence was the one that most people chose. So, I can probably talk about that, but I will take them in order. And I just wanna see if the chat is working here. Is this on? And it looks like it is. So, um so let me talk about English grammar and the reason why I think it's so important. The English grammar provides you with rules, guidelines, um, some some structure for sentences, how to put a subject and a verb together in a sentence, how to make negatives, how to make questions, and then how to use all the different verb tenses, which I think is really at the root of English grammar. If you know how to use all 12 of the English verb tenses, then you're you're on your way to really understanding grammar. In addition, of course, are adjectives and adverbs, conjunctions, prepositions, pronouns, really the 8 parts of speech are all important when you study English grammar. When I teach my students, I will often go over with them the 8 parts of speech, the 12 verb tenses, active and passive voice. We spend a lot of time on particular verbs, like the verb be and the verb do and the verb have. Those 3 are really, really important. Yes, adverbs are used for verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. That's correct. They're often identified with that ly ending. You can speak English without adverbs, um, but of course you have to know how to use them because you'll have to understand how they're being used when you listen to people speak English. So, in addition to grammar, then of course there's vocabulary, starting with basic vocabulary. On my new website, EnglishForThePlanet.com, I'll put this in here. Still promoting this website. It's going to take a while for people to find it. I put in a vocabulary section and I've begun with really just basic words. And over time, I'll add to it. But I think it's best to start off with the words that most people know, some of the functional words that you need to use when putting together your ideas. Words like to, for, and the question words when, where, so that once you have that basic vocabulary and you hear the words again and again and again, then it gets easier. I think it's easier on your ears because that's the first skill when you're learning English. I think you have to really be able to listen to what someone is saying, listen to the words that are being used, and recognize what those words mean. Of course, speaking English is more than just a bunch of words, but it's an area that you have to concentrate on. And then there's pronunciation, which is another big concern among many of my students, the ones that I work with during the day. I wouldn't worry too much about it. It comes with time, but there are some shortcuts that you can take in knowing how to pronounce certain words. If you listen to your teachers, you'll get some ideas about how to pronounce words that are blended together, how to make certain sounds. So, but that really does take time, and I don't think it's a bad idea to maybe exaggerate the sounds that you're making when you pronounce words instead of trying to sound like a native speaker right off the bat. I think it's better to try to pronounce the whole word from beginning to end. Words have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And knowing how to pronounce the consonants and the vowel sounds in each word I think that's what's really important. And then gradually try to, if you want to sound like a native speaker, if that's important to you, then you can do that. But it's better to know how to say the word properly. A word like going is a good example. When native speakers pronounce that word, you'll often hear going. Where are you going? And I think it's better if you pronounce it going. Where are you going? And then over time, that'll perhaps change and become going. But if you try to do that right off the bat, right at the very start, you're gonna make some mistakes. Did you hear the word going and going to? I said gonna. It's going to, gonna. Trying to say that, for example, I think is a mistake at first. It's better to pronounce every one of those words you're you intend on using. I'm gonna take a look at the chat and, yes, I think, yeah, confidence. I can address that too. Confidence is important because it's the thing that allows you to speak or write instead of feeling like you're blocked or prevented from speaking or communicating because you're too self-conscious. You should just let yourself go. If you ever observe children and how they communicate in their native language, of course, they just let themselves go and make mistakes. But even when children try to learn a second language, they kind of do the same thing. And they don't feel any sort of um, reticence um, to say what they're thinking. And I think that's good. They just let it happen and then suffer the consequences later. But but that confidence, it comes from practice. You do have to do it regularly with other people, whether, wherever you can find other people, you do have to do that. It's easier now because with online communications, you can practice with other people. It's good to get feedback also when you talk to other people or when you talk to a teacher. That's one thing that's a little difficult to do here. I can't hear or see you in order to listen to any questions or correct any pronunciation or give you advice about how you are pronouncing words. That in the future is a possibility. Really would like to work on that. And as I've mentioned in the past, my concern is just that when it's a live event, I can't control everything that a person says, and that could result in some kind of disaster. If someone is allowed to speak without censor being censored, that could cause some problems. Kind of like the stuff that happens in a chat room. If you're familiar with what happens in chat rooms, the same thing could possibly happen here, and I'd rather that not happen. A lot of people just telling me where they're from. It's always interesting to see what part of the world you're watching from. Still amazes me that I can turn this thing on and capture the attention of people around the world instantly. I don't think there's that much of a delay. There's probably some delay, but it's amazing that, you know, someone is watching from Brazil or Russia and the communication is instant. That's really amazing. But back to the subject of confidence. The more you study, the more confident you'll be. So I think if you just continue your 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 course of study, reading, listening, speaking when possible, writing is important. Just do all those things. Make it a habit. Set aside an hour at least every day to practice those things. Ivan is saying, Ivan says he's watching from Colombia and has watched my videos since 2008. How about that? Yeah, I've been doing this since 2008. And the videos are different. When I began, I started doing it from my classroom after my classes were over, and then I tried making some videos in my house. Those are terrible, by the way. And the ones that I make now, I I'm at my house, but I have an office space, and it's actually a fairly large room, which has good acoustics, good lighting. I have a big whiteboard. It's a 4 by 8 whiteboard. It's very large, and a decent camera. Those things all help. Microphones help. At first, the audio and video were captured from the built-in camera and microphone, and I think that's why it was so awful. But of course, that technology has improved. I put out a video um, recently on the word nor. That's a conjunction, and and then the one before that, I think it was one that I put out just was it yesterday or the day before? I don't. I actually don't remember what it was. Um, let's see. This is my notebook when I write down ideas for videos, and boy, drawing a blank. I can't remember what it was. I just make these videos and then edit, and then just kind of forget about it. That's embarrassing. Let's see. The last video. Oh yeah, about time. Oh gosh, time is running out. So all the different ways to talk about time. How much time do you have? How much time does he have? When's the due date? What's the deadline? That was it. So, I got that idea for a video when I looked at the question, on paper, um, it was how long do I have? That was it. How long do I have? So that's a good question when asking about limited time. But for a person who hears it the first time, that might be kinda confusing. How long do I have? How long does she have? Those are good questions for a person who's taking a test or has to get something completed in a relatively short period of time. The person tells you that you have, and then the amount of time. You have 30 minutes. It's fairly simple. The main verb is have. And you could put that in the past if you wanted to. I think in the video I mentioned I think it's most often used in the present tense and for future situations. But if you said, I had 30 minutes to complete the test, that sounds good. That's the past tense. So anyway, that was the video that I put out yesterday or the day before. The next video I think is going to be on and. I made one back in 2008. That's why one reason why I thought I would choose that particular topic because I saw it from 2008, and of course it looked terrible. And I think, after how many years? 17 years, it's time for a refresh. So I'm going to refresh that. I might use some of the same content from that video, but I'll add to it. It's not a hard thing to get. It's a very simple word. You all know how to use it, but the pronunciation sometimes deserves a little bit of attention because it's so quick. The way that people pronounce "and" when it just sounds like "n," it's so quick, and you might miss it. If I say, for example, I like to listen to rock and roll instead of rock and roll, it's rock and roll, and that's the way most people pronounce that. Rock and roll. So, um, so that might be the next one, unless you have an idea for a video. If you do, just submit it anywhere. I really do read the comments. I don't comment on all the comments because I don't know what to say. Uh, People make nice comments, and I appreciate that, but I really don't know what to say all the time. So I don't comment on all the comments. It's Sunday afternoon in Minnesota. You might get some snow tonight. It's cold today. It's colder. It's in the 40s right now, I think, 30s or 40s. The sun is out. That makes it a little warmer. But I always look forward to the winter because then I don't have to do any work outside. All those chores that I would normally do when it's warm, that can wait until spring. Although before the ground freezes, I do have to do a few things. I have to prepare my garden beds to get ready for next year. Just have to move some soil around and I amend the soil, put in some organic materials, and then I'll be ready when the ground thaws in April, maybe April. So it's good to, if you can do it, it's good to work with soil, try to grow your own food. That's a huge interest of mine, gardening. I really enjoy doing that, which calls to mind, another strategy for people who want to improve their English. I think it's important for you to really pay attention to your interests. Do the things that you like to do so that you have some experience in doing those things, whatever that is. And then perhaps find the words in English for those activities and for those um, objects or people who are involved in those activities. So if you like gardening or if you enjoy art, if you enjoy sports, knowing the vocabulary related to those things in English and of course your first language, that's a good regular habit to get into. And of course, once you know what those words are, try to write them down somewhere in a notebook. As I mentioned before, I have notebooks for different things. I keep lots of notes on my activities and the things that I am working on. Um, I have a notebook that I use just for the videos, and then a notebook for my website. I keep a notebook for my job. I'm an English teacher, and so things that I'm working on, projects, lessons, I have a notebook for that. And then I play guitar, and I keep a notebook for that as well. so that I'm, conscious of what I'm working on at any given moment, whether it's a song or it's a scale, chords, new chords, old chords. Um, I write that down, and that's a good thing to do, because I can look back on that and see how I have made progress. I also write down the names of the YouTube channels that I go to, when I'm playing guitar. And I think that's a good idea for you, if you keep a notebook for learning English. Write down the name of the channel that you're watching and perhaps the title of the video so that you can find it later. And, put a date on that whenever you've watched the video. If you put today's date, for example, November 16th, 2025, what you learned from the video, any new vocabulary that you gained, perhaps some aspect of pronunciation, or it could be grammar, something that you recognize, something that you had difficulty with. If you note that, that can help, um, so that you know what to concentrate on. See people here from, I'll just go through the list. um, Belarus, Brazil, Turkey, Argentina, Iran, uh, Istanbul. It's amazing. It's fun to make the videos, knowing that they're helping people. And I was a radio and TV major in college, and so I learned a few things about how to put together audio and video. Um, I could be better at it, as evidenced by today's failed attempt to put together a live streaming event. I tried using some other software other than what YouTube provides, and I'll get it. Just a matter of time. It's yet another thing to learn about when doing things on the internet, or using a computer. There's always something new to learn. And of course, I think we all have to limit the amount of time that we spend in front of the computer and make sure that, we get outside and interact with other people. Put the cell phone away. There are a lot of people these days who walk around with their cell phone in front of them. They're walking and looking down at the cell phone. I see it all the time. And I think it's a bad habit. I hope that goes away. I think it will eventually be one of those things that people just, don't do because it looks so silly. Uh, Maya said, excuse me. Maya says I play the guitar too and sing. That's great. It's such an interesting instrument, the way it's laid out, and beautiful too. Guitars are really beautiful objects. The wood that's used, the way the fingerboard is put together, and the math that's involved. I think that's one of the things that I find so fascinating, is in how the fingerboard is is laid out, and where you put your fingers on the strings, and how the frets and the strings and everything, goes together, and you learn these different patterns. And of course, the sound. You learn to listen. Just like with English, you have to learn to listen. If you try playing the guitar or if you try speaking English without developing those vital listening skills, it's going to be more difficult. You could do it, but are you doing it um, in a manner that is most beneficial for you, or are you, simply repeating something that you've memorized, which comes in handy? But I know from experience and studying German, there were a lot of sentences I put together that I just memorized, and I didn't understand every single word that I was using. I didn't understand the significance of each word, or perhaps the intonation that was being used. And you have to know those things. So, yeah, what is the hardest part of learning English? That's the question I began with half an hour ago. And in the community section, many people responded to that question. The options were grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, confidence. Some people said all four, or that you couldn't distinguish among those. They kind of all go together, which is true. But it is possible to focus on one thing at a time in order to be better, to get better. Yeah, writing helps a lot. I think you have to write. Okay, it's been 30 minutes. I have to get outside. I've got a couple hours before I eat dinner. And but I just wanted to get on here, and I'm still practicing this. I expect I'll get better at it. I was a radio and TV major, as I said. So I think I'll just continue to practice this, and make it better, make it more interesting. That's my main concern, is that this is interesting and not boring or stupid. So, hello from Germany. V. Gates. Just reading the comments. Okay, so I got to go, and watch for my next video. I think it'll be within the next day or two. And I think it's going to be and. So that'd be simple. Uh, might not put it on my Learn American English Online channel. I might put that on English for the English for the Planet. I'm not sure. The English for the Planet videos are right now um, very short and focused on pronunciation and just basic grammar. But yeah, so just watch for the videos to come that I put out, and have a good day. I gotta go, and thanks for coming. I appreciate everybody coming here today. Have a good day. Okay. Bye bye.